The Andes Mountains are not merely a geographical feature. To the people who have lived in their shadow for 4,000 years, they are living entities. They are the Apus, the lords. They watch, they judge, and sometimes they take. At 10,000 feet above sea level, the air is thin. Survival here requires a hardness of spirit. In 1939, the modern world of radio, automobiles, and antibiotics felt like a distant rumor to the inhabitants of the Huancavelica region. But in the spring of 1939, a remote village named Ticrapo hid a secret so disturbing, so biologically impossible, that it would force the entire world to question the boundaries of human nature. It is a story that begins with a superstition and ends with a medical file that remains, to this day, one of the most protected documents in history. What you are about to hear is one of the most documented medical anomalies in history, yet it remains unsolved. If you enjoy deep dives into true crime, dark history, and the unexplained, welcome to Shadow Chapters. Consider subscribing so you don't miss our next investigation. Our story begins in the Ticrapo. Ticrapo is not an easy place to live. In 1939, it was a place where modern medicine was a rumor and survival depended on the harvest and the mercy of the spirits. In a small mud brick house lived the Medina family. They were humble, hardworking people. Tiborello, a silversmith, and Victoria, a homemaker, and their daughter, Lina. Lina was 5 years old. By all accounts, she was a normal, happy child. She helped her mother cook. She played in the river. But in early 1939, something changed. Lina began to complain of heaviness. She stopped running. And then the swelling began. At first, her parents ignored it. A stomachache, a parasite, common ailments in the rural Andes. But the stomach continued to distend. It grew hard. It grew round. It grew with a terrifying speed, expanding week by week until Lina looked like a distinct, impossible shape. To the modern eye, the delay in Lina's treatment seems negligent. Why did her parents wait? Why did they think a snake was inside her? To answer that, we must understand the world of the Peruvian Andes in 1939. In the cosmology of the Quechua-speaking peoples, the line between the physical and the spiritual is thin. The Apu are the spirits of the mountains, powerful, sometimes vengeful entities. When a sudden, unexplained illness strikes, especially a swelling of the belly, it is often interpreted not as biology, but as intrusion, a curse. The village elders whispered. They told Tiborello that a snake, a giant serpent spirit, had entered the girl while she bathed in the river. It was growing inside her, feeding on her organs, preparing to burst out. Gerardo Medina was not a negligent father. He was a desperate one. He exhausted the science he knew, the shaman, before turning to the science he feared, the hospital. The journey to Lima wasn't just a trip across a map. It was a migration across centuries of belief systems. By April 1939, faith had run out. The snake was now so large that Lina could barely stand. Tiborello and Victoria made a decision that likely saved her life. They would leave the mountains. The journey from Ticrapo to the nearest city, Pisco, was brutal. It meant traversing unpaved roads, sheer cliffs, and varying altitudes. Tiborello often had to carry his 5-year-old daughter on his back when the roads became impassable, her weight pressing against him, a heavy, hard burden that defied explanation. When they finally arrived in Pisco, the local doctors were stumped. They saw a malnourished girl with a massive abdominal protrusion. Their diagnosis was immediate and tragic: a tumor. In 1939, a tumor of that size in a child was a death sentence. The doctors in Pisco didn't have the equipment to operate. They cast the buck. They sent the family to the capital, Lima. Lina arrived at the General Hospital in Lima, frightened, small, and in pain. She was admitted under the care of a young, brilliant specialist, Dr. Gerardo Lozada. Dr. Lozada prepared for the worst. He ordered the standard battery of tests for an abdominal mass, expecting to find a cyst, a teratoma, or perhaps a parasitic infection. But the physical exam yielded a confusing result. The mass wasn't solid like a tumor. It was fluid. And when he pressed his stethoscope against the 5-year-old's skin, the room went silent. Swish, thump, swish, thump. It wasn't Lina's heartbeat. It was too fast. It was distinct. Dr. Lozada thought his equipment was broken. He checked again. The sound remained. It was a fetal heartbeat. Dr. Lozada needed proof. He ordered an X-ray. The developing fluid revealed the white, ghostly outline of a spine, ribs, a skull, a fully formed 7-month-old fetus curled inside the abdomen of a kindergartner. To understand how a 5-year-old could become a mother, we must look not at the womb, but at the brain, specifically a tiny, pea-sized organ at the base of the skull called the pituitary gland. In a normal timeline, this gland remains dormant regarding sexual development until a child reaches adolescence. But in rare cases, this clock breaks. It's a condition called precocious puberty. In Lina Medina's case, the timeline was accelerated to a frightening degree. Medical records from Dr. Lozada revealed that Lina had her first menstrual cycle at just 2.5 years old. By age 4, she had developed breast tissue. By age 5, her pelvic bones had begun to widen, though not enough for a full-term birth. While she was a child emotionally and intellectually, her endocrine system was that of a grown woman.
Confidentiality was attempted, but in 1939, a secret like this had gravity. Leaks occurred. The medical community was abuzz. But time does not stop for medical ethics. The baby was coming. Lina's pelvis was the size of a child's. A natural birth would rip her apart. A cesarean section was the only option. On May 14, 1939, ironically Mother's Day, Lina was wheeled into surgery. Dr. Lozada held the scalpel. At 5 years, 7 months, and 21 days old, Lina Medina became a mother. She delivered a healthy baby boy weighing 2.7 kilograms. They named him Gerardo after the doctor. The photo taken that day shows a bewildered child lying next to an infant. She didn't look at him with maternal instinct. She looked at him with curiosity. To Lina, Gerardo was a new doll, a playmate. The nurses noted that she was more interested in playing with paper cutouts than holding the infant. As the anesthesia wore off, the reality set in. A pregnancy at age 5 is not a biological accident. It is evidence of a crime. The Peruvian authorities moved swiftly. They did not look far. The first suspect in cases of incest is almost always the father. Gerardo Medina was arrested. The man who had carried his daughter down the mountain to save her life was now dragged to a jail cell, accused of being the monster who destroyed it. The interrogation was brutal. The police were under immense pressure. They grilled Tibulero for days. He wept, he prayed, he denied everything. He claimed he had no idea how this happened, reverting to the only explanation he understood, the spirits. They turned to Lina. But how do you interview a 5-year-old about sexual assault? Lina was nonverbal about the trauma. She was confused. She gave contradictory answers. She didn't understand how babies were made, so she couldn't explain who had made this one. Without a confession and without a witness, the law was paralyzed. Tibulero was released for lack of evidence. The police file remained open, but the line for father remained blank. To this day, the perpetrator is listed as unknown.
If the crime was dark, the public reaction was blinding. By June 1939, the story of Lina Medina had exploded onto the front pages of the world. The American press, hungry for distraction as the shadow of World War II loomed, devoured the story. A stream of offers arrived at the hospital. A promoter from the United States offered $1,000 a week, an absolute fortune in 1939, to put Lina and her baby on display at the New York World's Fair. Imagine the life that was planned for them. Lina sitting on a stage holding her son while strangers paid a nickel to gawk at the 5-year-old mother. But Dr. Lozada stood guard. He acted as a human shield. He declared that Lina and Gerardo were patients, not products. He knew the family could not return to Ticrapo. The stigma would destroy them. So he gave Lina a job. He hired her as a secretary in his clinic. He paid for Gerardo's school. He gave them a sanctuary. The 1940s brought a strange normalcy to Lina Medina's life. In the quiet corridors of Dr. Lozada's clinic, a little boy named Gerardo was growing up. He was healthy, intelligent, and completely unaware of his origin story. To protect the child's psyche, the family constructed a lie, a necessary fiction. Gerardo was told that Lina, who was only 5 years his senior, was his older sister. Tiberello and Victoria were raised as his parents. It was a deception born of love. How do you explain to a child that his sister is his mother? How do you explain that his father is a ghost? For 10 years, the lie held. But secrets are like water. They always find a way out. By 1949, Gerardo was 10 years old. The whispers began in the schoolyard. Children are cruel, and they repeat the gossip of their parents. Your sister isn't your sister, they taunted. Ask the doctor. The doubt took root. Gerardo found the clippings. He saw the face of his sister in the newspapers from 1939. He did the math. The 10-year-old boy realized that the girl he fought with over toys was the woman who had brought him into the world. Gerardo confronted Dr. Lozada. He demanded the truth. The doctor confirmed it. Lina was his mother. Instead of destroying them, the truth seemed to forge a stronger bond. Lina, now a teenager herself, faced her son, and they moved forward together, guarding the mystery of his paternity with a fierce loyalty.
As the decades passed, the world began to forget about the little miracle of the Andes. Lina Medina never capitalized on her fame. She remained a clerk, a secretary. She lived a life of aggressive privacy. Her wages were modest, but every spare soul went to one purpose: Gerardo. She paid for his uniforms, his books, and his university tuition. Gerardo thrived. He graduated from school and secured a good job. In the shadow of her son's success, Lina finally allowed herself a personal life. In her early 30s, she married a man named Raul Jurado. In 1972, at the age of 38, 33 years after her first child, Lina became pregnant again. She gave birth to a second son, proving that despite the trauma of her precocious puberty, she was a healthy adult woman. But history was not done with the Medina family. In 1979, Gerardo Medina was 40 years old. He was a grown man, living a quiet life, but his body began to fail him. He was diagnosed with a rare bone marrow disease. Speculation ran wild. Was this disease a consequence of his impossible birth?
Was it the result of being born to a 5-year-old mother whose own bones were still developing? The medical consensus is no. It was simply a cruel, random twist of fate. The disease was aggressive. Lina sat by his bedside. The mother, who had been a child when he was born, was now a middle-aged woman watching her son die. In late 1979, Gerardo Medina passed away. The miracle baby of the Andes defied nature to enter the world, but he could not defy death. He was only 40 years old. Lina Medina buried her son, and with him, she buried the last physical link to the event that defined her life. She lived for another 36 years after his death. She lived into the age of the internet, where her story was digitized and debated, but she never participated. She never wrote a book. She never gave an interview. She never sold the movie rights. She died in November 2015 at the age of 82. The line on Gerardo's birth certificate remains blank. Was it a family member, a stranger, a superstition made flesh? We will likely never know. And perhaps that is exactly how Lina wanted it. In a life where her body was public property, her silence was the only thing she truly owned. The world remembers her as a medical miracle, but looking back, the story of Lina Medina isn't about biology. It's about a scared little girl who survived the impossible and the silence she kept to protect the innocent.